All right, hello and welcome back to the Thomas Fitch Sports Show. Is there drama in the Texas football program with the coaching staff? Texas basketball is midway through the season with men's and women's, so we're going to be taking a look at those programs, how they're doing, and what their path is to the tournament. Super Bowl, it's coming up this Sunday. We'll have a mini preview, but unfortunately, there's a bunch of bad teams in it. So we'll talk about that. And finally, Tiger was back this weekend, so we're going to talk all about that and more coming up on the Thomas Fitch Sports Show. All right, so let's get started. It is Monday afternoon, although this will be going live on YouTube and iTunes this Thursday. So, if something happens that I say and all of a sudden it comes wrong, especially with the basketball talk, don't hate me. This is what's going on. Anyways, so let's get started. Football, the big news of the week was the loss of Reggie Hemphill-Mapps. He announced that he would be transferring from the program, and that's a big loss for the program. He was a really good young wide receiver, a lot of promise there. He was a good returner as well. So the question is, you've lost him. You've lost multiple linemen who were graduating seniors who decided to not come back even though they had a year of eligibility left. Chris Warren leaves. So you have a lot of offensive players who are leaving, not for the NFL. Well, Chris Warren eventually announced he was going to the NFL, but originally he left because he was transferring. So a lot of players transferring from the offensive side of the ball, and you just have to think there might be something there with the coaching staff. Obviously, there were struggles all year long on the offense. There was a lot of criticisms of Tim Beck. I don't know if this goes to Tim Beck or if this goes down to a receiver coach, what the issue is. But my thought is that there's some rift between Tim Beck and the players, and that's why they're leaving. And because we're not seeing this on the defensive side. The defensive guys seem bought in. Not only that, recruiting-wise, we did a good job of getting a lot of good defensive recruits, especially in the secondary. So I don't think this is a Herman problem, although to an extent it is because every problem is his problem. But I think this comes down more to the offensive coaches than anything else. So that's the big news as far as some drama. I don't think it's actually – there's a chance that he just wasn't liking his usage. There's a chance that he was suspended earlier on in the season. I don't know if he got in some more trouble and Herman's laying down the law and he's not liking that. I'm not sure. But something's going on there. It may be too soon to call it drama, but yeah, there's something's going on. The other thing, because this is by the way, I forgot to say, this is the first Thomas Fitch Sports Show where we are not recapping a Texas football game since the summer. But we have a little bit more football talk to do, and we will until National Signing Day. Some guys who we talked about last week, Joseph Osai, Ojomu, and Moro Ojomu, and Joshua Moore, all three targets. 2 of the 3, Osai and Moore, are 4 stars. Ojomu is a 3-star, but he'd be a huge defensive line commit. All those guys are starting to swing towards everybody's predicting them to go to Texas. So those would be huge commits. 2 of those guys being D linemen, the other guy being receiver, and now the receiver, that could be big with the loss of Reggie Hemphill-Mapps. So those are some things to look at as we go forward. I believe it's signing day is coming up. I want to say February 3rd, but don't quote me on that. It's early on in February. So there's a bunch of those names, some other 3-stars. The other names to look out for, obviously the biggest one as far as transfers go is Calvin Anderson. And during the last, when we were filming the last show, Anderson was on campus, supposedly had a really good visit, like the coaches, like the players. The players are recruiting him hard. That would be a huge grab by a guy who I think is coming from a lesser program and feels like for him to get to the next level, he's going to have to take his talents to a better school. Sometimes with these transfers, it's like, okay, are they just transferring because they can't get playing time? And if they can't get playing time, Are they that good? But when you see a guy transferring from a smaller school, that often means that they want to go have 1 or 2 years at a big college, try to improve their draft stock for the NFL. So that's about it for Texas football. I think that's the least amount of Texas football we've talked. Only 5 minutes, but that's okay because there's more stuff and better stuff in Texas sports to get to. Basketball right now. Since the last podcast, the last time we left y'all on the Thomas Fitch Sports Show, Texas was tied 14-14 against West Virginia, and they went on to get killed by 30 points. But since then, they rebounded with a nice win at home on Monday night against Iowa State. And then a solid win on Saturday against Ole Miss. Now, granted, both of these games, they're games you should win. But the good news about the game is the fact that, for the most part, there was never much worry. And that's the thing that gives me some confidence. And I would feel pretty confident to say that I think we're going to make the tournament because you pick up 2 more big wins. You get to 14 wins. You still have Oklahoma State left. That should be a win. Clearly, we're a team who can match up against any ranked teams. I think the OU game coming this weekend that we have before that there's a Tech game on the road. Both of those will be challenges for 2 different reasons. The Tech game is going to be a challenge because we've really struggled to win on the road. And so the question is, okay, we beat them at home. Can we go on the road and show some grit to win there? Because that's where we've struggled against teams like West Virginia, teams like Oklahoma State, and even at the beginning of the year on neutral sites against Duke and against Gonzaga, some losses we had. So those are going to be 2 big games. One Tech game is going to be big, and then the OU game is the other big game. That one's at home, college game day, so there'll be a lot of hype surrounding the game. So it'll be interesting how the players, again, a really young team, so it'll be interesting to see how the players can react to that, how they can take to the hype. But I want to say that this is we might not have played Kansas State. It's either the last or the second to last Big 12 team that we haven't played. So we'll get a look at Trae Young, who's obviously an excellent young player. It'll be interesting to see how our defense can go up against him. But that'll be a test because so far we've looked pretty good in home games, and getting a win there would be huge. Just being in a close game would show that, okay, there's a chance that we can beat some teams. We can beat TCU again. We can be in a close game with we've already played Kansas, but like West Virginia when they come home. So some tests for a young team. Speaking of young team, Mo Bamba has really been developing the last couple games. You look at his stat lines against Iowa State and against Ole Miss, 24.5 points per game, 13.5 rebounds per game, 3.5 blocks per game. And to me, what's the most impressive stat is his shooting. He's 15-9 field goals, 3 of 3 from the three-point line, and 16 of 17 from the free throw line. And overall, not just him, you look at guys like Roach, Davis, across the board, the shooting has, the last 4 or 5 games, save for West Virginia, has really improved. We're shooting free throws better. We can make threes. And that's huge because that's where we struggled early on, is there was just no offense. And so it's so easy to defend a team who can't shoot the three because you let them shoot and you guard the paint. But now that we're able to shoot threes, we can drive in the paint, spreads the offense out a lot more. But the big stat, 16 of 17 from the free throw line. Bamba against Ole Miss got to the free throw line, I believe, 13 times. And that's a lot. And what that means is he's learning, and this is some really mature stuff, he's learning how to draw a foul. And that is something that guys in the NBA, it'll take them years to do. But you look at guys like Russell Westbrook, James Harden, they're so good at getting to the line, and that's where you can pick up easy points. And his ability to do that the last couple games, as well as hit some threes, is huge as far as development. And you looking forward to Big 12 tournament and possibly the NCAA tournament. That's what you need. You need guys who can score all around because very few teams have made deep runs in the tournament who have been completely defensive minded. You know, you look at a team like Virginia, who right now they're in the top 4. But year after year, the last probably 5 or so years, they've been a 1, a 2, or a 3 seed who looks really good in the regular season, and they have a really good defense, and they go to the tournament, and someone surprises them because they get hot for one game. And that was what we've seen. You look at the Kansas game, a game that was close, but Kansas got hot. We couldn't compete with that. We lost. Same thing with Duke. And when all you have on your team is defense, and especially when your offense is reliant on turnovers, fast break points, you go against a really good offensive team and you're going to lose. And so the development offensively, especially when you get a big guy who can all of a sudden he can shoot, he can pass, he's starting to learn how to dribble. But he is. And when you have a big guy who can do that just spreads out the floor infinitely more. And so that's huge. That's going to be awesome to watch for the future, the second half of conference play and going into the tournaments. Next thing, let's talk about some women's basketball. It was an up and down week. You really look at the last 4 games. You lose a close one to UConn on or at home. Then you go and they beat Tech by 51 points. That's a huge win, and that was on the road. And then again on the road against Baylor, and we'll talk about this in a second. They lose by 30. Come back, play Iowa State this weekend, win by 30. And so it's a really inconsistent team. Like the men, they're struggling on the road against big teams. Actually, 3 of their 4 losses this year have come on the road against ranked teams. Tennessee, I believe, was one of their losses. TCU was the other. It's Tennessee, TCU, and Baylor were their 3 losses on the road. And the problem with this team is I just feel like there's not a lot of heart. When they play good, they play good. They're hitting shots. They find energy there. They struggle once they start to play poorly. And I noticed this, well, first in the Tennessee game, this was back in November, where they kind of get turnover happy. There's a lot of poor shot attempts. The defense gets lazy. We saw that against UConn as we blew the lead down the stretch, and UConn came back. And that was kind of how the whole Baylor game was. With Baylor just came out dominating, and it just felt like they gave up. And Karen Aston even said in one timeout, they had her wired. She said, are you guys scared of them because you're playing like that? And they really were. There was, turnovers. There was very few good looks offensively. We were getting bullied in the paint. But the funny thing is, then you beat Tech by 50. You beat Iowa State by 30, and you look really good. And a big factor in those losses is the road play. But this is an interesting team because it's a mixed team. You have a lot of experienced players. You got guys like Brooke McCarty, Ariel Atkins, who are seniors, but you also have a lot of young freshmen. And what disappoints me the most is Brooke McCarty and Ariel Atkins. They need to step up. They're seniors, they're leaders of this team, but I don't see it when they play. Especially the last couple games. Brooke's been especially disappointing. A lot of poor shot attempts. She just doesn't look confident. And you hate to see a player who's so good look so unconfident, struggling to find a shot, hesitant to shoot. Especially in the Baylor game, she didn't make a ton of shots. I know at one point she was 0 for 3 or 0 for 6. Not great shooting stats, but the whole team wasn't good. And when you're a leader of the team, when you're elite, that's when you have to step up and just take the ball and shoot it until it goes in. You see players like Russell Westbrook does that. Some of the best games that the Thunder play is when he's shooting, 10 of 30, but he's driving, he's missing shots, but the team can get rebounds. He's just putting them up, and because he's elite, the team wins. And so we need more leadership from Brooke, from Ariel, from the older girls on that team who've been there for a while and know what they're dealing with. And so that's really disappointing. And it really shows that there's still a lot of growth needed for this team. Obviously, to win the tournament, you have to be consistent. And at this point, I'm not seeing the consistency needed. This is obviously kind of like the men, a team who can be, you lose a game against UConn that you really should have won. And that's the best team in the league, hands down. And so clearly we could play with anybody. But Can we do that on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis? At this point, no. And that's where Aston needs to really do a good job in growing her team in that. But I will say what this does do is it makes Baylor look really good. And granted, you have to look at road versus playing at home, and it'll be interesting to see what happens when we do play them at home in a couple weeks. But Baylor beat us by 30 following a game where we almost beat a really good UConn team. We beat Tech by 50, and then the game after we get blown out by Baylor, we go and we beat Iowa State by 30 points. And so this is an incredibly dominant Baylor team who just bullied us up front. They played well, but they didn't even play great in the game. That was maybe the most disappointing thing is they had a lot of bad shot attempts. They missed plenty of shots. It was a game that if we had come and played aggressively, a game that we really should have had a chance to win. But we came in, there was no effort, there was no hustle, there was a lot of turnovers, a lot of poor shots put up, and the resulting what happens is you lose. And so there needs to be growth there. Really, both men's and women's team is there needs to be some consistency gained before you go into the tournament, because very few teams can win the tournament with inconsistent play like this. All right, so let's move on from Texas sports to the Super Bowl. This Sunday, Eagles, Patriots. What a fascinating matchup. Nick Foles. That's Nick Foles versus Tom Brady has to be the storyline. If you had told anybody that Nick Foles would be playing in the Super Bowl against Tom Brady, nobody would believe you. If you told anybody that Brady's path to the Super Bowl would be playing Marcus Mariota, Blake Bortles, and then Nick Foles, people would have said you're a lunatic. And that's just a testament to how crazy and wild and kind of fun this year's playoff has been. People kind of been ragging on the NFL, all different reasons, whether it's just saying it's boring or people getting mad about political issues. But this has been one of the most enjoyable playoffs that I can remember. Obviously, the highlight was the Vikings-Saints game where the Vikings scored as time ran out on a Hail Mary freak-like missed tackles play. And, of course, an irony of ironies, the most fitting Minnesota Vikings thing to do. Then, with a chance to go and play in your home stadium, you lose to the Eagles in the semifinals, and now you have to welcome the team that just beat you into your hometown for a week. So that's brutal for them. But, Nick Foles, what a story for him. You get benched. You have to watch Carson Wentz play all, the last two seasons. Carson Wentz has a great season, goes down with an injury, I believe second to last week of the season, maybe third to last. And what a job by Nick Foles to step up and play well. And what a job by the rest of the team. Nick Foles hasn't played terrible. I mean, he's made some nice throws, but you don't make it. Well, you kind of can make it on quarterback play. You look at what Aaron Rodgers has done in the past, but Nick Foles didn't lead them to the playoff. The whole team did, and the ability of the team to rally and not give up after losing your star player, your MVP candidate, that takes a lot of grit. And so, if I was predicting the game, I would say Patriots win. I think it's the Patriots. I think the spread is Patriots -5, I think. And, I would if it's -5, I would take the Eagles. If it's -3, I would take the Patriots. I'm not exactly sure on that line, but I think it's going to be a close game. This is an Eagles team that I just think they're playing with a lot of heart right now. And in a way, it kind of reminds me of the Giants teams that have beaten the Patriots in the past. Not, obviously, they came in as the number one seed, and so they have more overall talent than the two times when the Giants won as wild cards. But, you lose a quarterback, and it almost, they've been underdogs this whole playoffs, this whole year in the playoffs. And so it's that kind of underdog role. Nobody thinks that they were going to make it out of the first round, let alone now. And I feel like that's what the Giants have done when they've beaten the Patriots. But here's the deal: every time we think the Patriots are going to lose, they don't. You know, if a 28-3 lead is not safe against the Patriots, it's almost impossible to beat them anyway. And they looked really good against the Jaguars. Another thing, we say Brady had to play, Blake Bortles to make it to the Super Bowl, and people harp on Bortles, and there's the joke that, how many Super Bowls has Blake Bortles lost? 0. Tom Brady's lost, 2 or whatever. But, what's impressive to me, Blake Bortles looked really good in that the AFC Championship game for how much crap he was given, how much everybody was saying the only way that the Jaguars win is if they run the ball. But he looked really good. Unfortunately, the coaches didn't trust him, and it was a really conservative play call. I think that was a dumb move by the coaching staff. Nobody beats the best team in the league by playing conservative. No Cinderella team has won the tournament and been like, oh yeah, we played it really safe that whole time. No, I mean, that's the Patriots can play it safe. The Alabama can play it safe. The Spurs, the Warriors, those teams can play it safe. They can play conservative because they're good. But if you're trying to knock off the top dog, and the Patriots not just top dog this year, but, just one of the best franchises ever over the last, 15 years, you're not gonna beat them by playing conservatively. And it is, impressive that the Jaguars could be in a spot where they almost won with their conservative play calling, but they're going to have to, you look at next year, who even knows if Blake Bortles will be starting, but it'll be interesting to see. They have such a good defense. It'll be fun to watch them grow, and they're such a young team, but, you go back to the AFC Championship game, just if the coaches put just a little bit more trust in Blake Bortles, maybe he loses the game for you. Well, they already lost with the not putting trust in Blake Bortles. So if they just had put a little trust in Blake Bortles, maybe they would have been able to take down the Patriots. Anyways, I don't know who I'm rooting for because, as a Redskins fan, I can't really root for the Eagles. And I've just kind of had I've never liked the Eagles, regardless of being a Redskins fan or whatever. There's just something about them. Maybe it's the green, whatever. I don't like them. But then it's them or it's the Patriots. But sometimes it's just fun to watch a team be so good, so dominant. Sometimes it's just fun to watch that and be like, okay, who's the next challenger? Who's going to get to face them? And so I may find myself 6 days from now cheering for the Patriots. We'll see. But I really do think it'll be a good Super Bowl. I think it'll be a close one. I think it'll come down to the wire, but I think at the end of the day, it's Tom Brady, it's Bill Belichick, and they pull it off. All right, so the final part of our show, fantastic Farmers Insurance Open with Tiger Woods. He is back in the PGA, and he made his first cut since 2015. He had played in the Hero World Championship, whatever, Open, but that was an official PGA. There was no cut line, not a lot of teams, not a lot of fans watching, but on a fairly easy course. But now you come to a U.S. Open course. You're playing against a huge field of people. There's a cut line, and it came down to Friday. He needed a birdie on the last hole to make it in, to make the cut, and he did. And the number one word of the tournament that was thrown around when you talk about Tiger was grinding. And it really was true if you watched him. He only hit 17 out of 56 fairways. That's 30% for to do that in a tournament on a U.S. Open type, very difficult course. That's incredibly impressive. He finished shooting 3 under over the 4 days, but the way he was able to scramble from there, he 42 out of 72 greens in regulation, so 58% greens hit after hitting 30% of fairways. But he chipped incredibly. It was, the last couple of times when we've seen Tiger, his chipping has really struggled. But this was the touch he had. I mean, it looked like early 2000s Tiger. It was fun to watch. numerous times where he just almost chipped it in and was able to save par or make a birdie. But obviously the driver was a struggle, and I thought the putter was a struggle more than other people have said. He didn't miss any putts that were like, oh, you can't do that. And the greens are really tough. It's a tough course to play on. But he made a couple big putts, but I think he still needs to work on, I feel like at the end of his round, especially on Sunday, his lag putts started to, the touch with the distance wasn't quite there. But again, that's getting used to it. And so he's still, if he can work on his putting and just hit some more fairways. He's got 2 weeks off. His next tournament is the Genesis Open in Riviera. That's February 15th through 18th. So that's 2 weeks from now. Next week's the Waste Management Open. That's a fun one in Phoenix. And the week after that, the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Just a lot of fun golf tournaments this time of year when we're kind of getting out of football mode, kind of sliding into basketball mode, but you kind of need that buffer. So you got some fun tournaments to watch while you kind of wait to transfer from football to basketball. But he's got some time to practice between then. I don't know. He hasn't announced where. Obviously, he said his goal is the Masters. His goal is to get his game good before the Masters. So I think he probably plays. The Arnold Palmer is in, I think it's end of February, early March. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays in that. Maybe one more tournament in between there, because part of it, he needs to work on his game. Just as many swings as he get in after going so long, not being able to do that. But a lot of his rust is just not having played in a tournament. And so I think getting a couple more tournaments under his belt before the Masters, and if he can get his driver back straight, he's absolutely going to be a threat come April in Augusta, and that's going to be fun to watch. The only key is he just has to stay healthy, and who knows? He looks great. His swing is fast. A lot of tough shots from the rough. That's what happens when your accuracy isn't good. You're having to make really aggressive swings and really turn through it. But his back seemed fine. Knocking on wood here for those of y'all who can't see, but I knocked on wood everywhere in this place. But he looks a lot better after the surgery. I think he finally waited long enough. I think he kind of was pushing himself to get back, but I feel like this time he waited a good amount of time to get back into playing. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be, I think, a really exciting golf this 2018 season. It's fun. We finished with a Ryder Cup in France, so a lot of fun stuff to look forward to. If Tiger can stay healthy this whole year, it's going to be awesome. How the whole tournament ended, it was actually an insane ending, not just because Tiger was playing. He wasn't in the mix in the end, but it came down to, I think with 5 holes left, there were 4 guys tied at 11 under or something like that. It was Alex Noren, Jason Day, Ryan Palmer, and J.B. Holmes. J.B. Holmes ended up not making the playoff, but those first 3 names, Noren, Day, and Palmer, go into a playoff. And anytime, it's such a pretty course. It was at Torrey Pines in San Diego. It was, 75-degree weather. It was sunny. You get the beaches and some cliffs into the ocean. Just gorgeous view. So anytime you get to watch more golf, hear more of Jim Nantz and Nick Faldo, it's just a treat. But anyways, they go into a playoff. First hole, Ryan Palmer gets knocked out. But they play 5 playoff holes. And eventually it gets so dark that they interviewed Jason Day after they suspended play on Sunday night. And he goes, I couldn't even see my approach shot. It was just a wild ending. When they were tied, they kept matching each other's scores. It was exciting. It was a bummer because I was hungry and wanted to leave and get food, but I couldn't leave because, you can't miss stuff like that. Anyways, they picked up today, this morning at 10 a.m., and it was kind of as I predicted. When they had played, they had been playing for 7 hours, and so it's kind of a mix between being warmed up and being exhausted. But now they had to wake up early. They're exhausted from playing for some 7.5 hours or whatever yesterday. They're stiff, and last hole, Jason Day ended up winning. Alex Noren actually had the better drive. He was in the fairway, whereas Fowler, I believe, was in the bunker. But Noren's hit a 3-wood. There was a par 5, and there was a pond in front of the water, and the ball just hits the top right before the green and trickled down into the water. Fowler went on and made a really nice approach shot for a birdie. But It's a bummer for Norm because he was, a yard away from having an eagle putt and a chance to win or at least advance the playoffs. But great tournament. Great to see a guy like Jason Day, who's gone through a lot. His mom had cancer last year. He's fought through a lot of medical issues. He wasn't even sure if he was going to play in the tournament. He sat out Wednesday's Pro-Am because he had a stiff back. But great to see him win. He's a great guy, great family guy. And always great to any extra day where you can hear Jim Nantz and Nick Faldo talk is incredible. Anyways, that's going to do it for us on the Thomas Fitch Sports Show for this week. Again, for y'all watching right now, this isn't going to air until Thursday. But that's going to do it. We will see you next week, and it's going to be a sad episode because we will officially be done with all football. Anyways, from the Thomas Fitch Sports Show, I'm Thomas Fitch. Hook 'em horns. Let go of everything.